Okay, today we're going to go over how to make a histogram. So this is part of the Integrated Algebra Statistics Standard. Construct a histogram, a cumulative frequency histogram, and a box and whisker plot. So we're actually going to construct a histogram and a cumulative frequency histogram. And this is going to be based on the frequency table that you made yesterday. So let's take a frequency table. This table shows the distribution of test scores for 32 students in a class. The data has been organized into 6 intervals of length 10. So again, remember length 10 from 91 to 100. It looks like it's length of 9, but the test scores of 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, all the way up to 100 would be in there. So if you count those, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I must have missed one. Oh, I missed 99. Okay, so actually that would be 10. So the intervals of length 10 have been added. And you can see the frequency at which students scored in those range. So 6 students scored between 91 and 100, 8 scored between 81 and 90, and so on. So to make a histogram, we are going to use the ranges that are set aside here, and we're going to use the frequencies here, and we're going to plot it. And it's going to look kind of like a bar graph, except with the histogram, since the ranges are, there's no space between the ranges. So after you go from the lower end of one range, you get to the next number, which is the top end of the next range. There's no space between the ranges, so there are no spaces between the bars in a histogram. So there's no spaces here. Okay? That word is spaces. Okay, so we want to organize the ranges are always going to be on the x-axis, so we want to write test scores. And I'm going to assume that these are percentages, even though it doesn't really say that. And frequency, or I want to write, actually not frequency, but number of students. So if it gives you something like, frequency is a general name. If it becomes more specific, then you want to put that here. So number of students, right there. All right, and so we want to break it up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranges. So we want to have 6 spaces here, which would mean 5 dashes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dashes gets you 6 spaces, and they're not quite even. So I might try to do this one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You want the intervals to be even. So in the first one, we're going to start with the lower end here. Okay, and I do have a little break right there because it doesn't start at 0. So in the first one I have 41 to 50. Okay, I'm going to use a finer pen here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and add all of these things in. Okay, so I filled in all the ranges on my x-axis, and it's a little messy, and my pen is not very thin, so hopefully you didn't do it as messy as I did. Now on the y-axis, you want to put the number of students. So it looks like the highest value that I have is 11. So and I don't want to use a break in my y-axis. I never want to use a break in my y-axis here. So okay, or I don't want to use a break in this case. You may want to use a break if your frequencies are really high, like if they're all in the 100s, or if they're all between 150 and 175, for instance, you might want to use a break. Otherwise, it'd be very hard to keep everything on the same graph. So, but for this, my highest thing is 11, so I'll just go up to 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, you want to make the spaces even. So. Okay, so I just barely made it to 11 here. So 1, 2, 3. And 11 is in here. Okay. Okay, and now to make a histogram, you just go along the data set. So here's our data. And you draw bars as the height of the frequency. So from 41 to 50, the bar should be a height of 3. So you do a rectangle, that's the height of 3, and hopefully should be a proper rectangle. All right, so here's, so it's 3 students score between 41 and 50. Now 0 students score between 51 and 60. Notice I still have to keep that range there, even though 0 students are there, so I just wouldn't draw a rectangle in that range. 61 to 70, so we should have 4 students there, so we make a rectangle at 70 here. Okay. And then 71 to 80, there's 11 students, so we go all the way up to 11 and try to, okay. And then we have 8 and 6, so 8 in the next one, right here, and 6 in the last one, okay. And so there's our histogram, and we probably want to title it. We always want to title it. So let's say test scores. Okay, and I don't think we can be any more specific about that. Okay, and remember the heights of the bars, you can put, sometimes people put the heights on top here. So 4, 0, 11 would be up there, and then 8 and 6. So those numbers, 3, 4, 0, 11, 8, and 6, those should add up to 32, right? Because we have 32 students in the class, so everyone in the class is represented by these ranges here, okay? So let's just make sure that's 7, that's 18, 26, and 32. Okay, so that is fine. Okay, now to make a cumulative frequency histogram, we first have to get the cumulative frequency part of the table. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the cumulative frequency, but I actually want to start from the lower range going up. So wherever your lower range is, my lower range for this table is at the bottom. So I actually want to start my cumulative frequency at the bottom. And I know that's a little weird because before we started from the top and went down. But since my lowest range, you always want to start with your lowest range and then proceed either upward or downward depending on if the lowest range is on the bottom or the top. So here I have 3, okay? And then by the time I get to those two, I add 0 onto 3 to get 3. So what this means is that 3 students have scored between, 3 students have scored, let's say, lower than 60, okay? And then I would go 7, because I'm adding 4 to it, and then I would go to 18, and then I would go to 26, because I'm adding 8, and then I'd go to 32, okay? And again, I want to keep those, the ranges on the x-axis the same, so I had 6 ranges. Okay, and I'm going to pause the video and put the range values at the bottom. Okay, so I just went ahead and did that. So remember, this is test scores. And always start with the smallest range first. The smallest range should be closest to the origin. Okay, and then as you proceed upward, okay, so our highest cumulative frequency is going to be 32. So we've got to make sure that 32 fits on this. So maybe a good way to do this is to go up by 5. So if we did 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, that would be 30, and then 35 would be up there. So 32 would be along there. So we go 5, 10, 15, and this would be 20, 25, 30, and then 35. And I skipped 25 because my table's in the way right here. And this would be frequency. Okay, so we start with the lowest range. So from 41 to 50, 3 students had been there. So it's a little bit more than halfway. Okay, and then from 51 to 60, we have just 3 students again. Okay, and then we go up to 7. So 7 is right here about. So, okay, and then 18 would be next. So it's about here. Okay, and then 26 is next, so that would be just a little bit higher than 25. Mine is really not precise, so you just make sure you are making yours more precise than mine. And the next one's 32, so you go up, then a little bit beyond 30, and bring that up down there. Okay, and 32, and your last number should be equal to the amount of students. So this is showing just sort of how fast, with each increase in range, how many more students you're adding. So for instance, let's just look at one of these bars for a minute. Let's just focus on this bar right here, okay? This bar is the 81 to 90 range, but it means that from 90 and below, okay? There are 26 students who scored 90 or below, okay? This is the number of students who scored 80 or below. This is the number of students who scored 70 or below. This is the number that scored 60 or below, and so on. And of course, the number of students who scored 100 or below is 32, which is your total population, right? And that's how you make both a cumulative frequency histogram and frequency histogram. And I should have titled this test scores. Okay, a good graph has a title on the x-axis, the y-axis, and the top. And actually, frequency, you could have been more specific and written number of students.